Welcome into the On3 studios here in Nashville, Tennessee. Today is Sunday, July 7th. We're here for the Inside Scoop. Now, there was lots of commitments over the weekend, lots to break down. We're going to tell you what it all means. Let's start by taking a look at the top 10. Here we have Ohio State sticking at number 1. They had a huge pickup in linebacker Riley Pettijohn. The borderline 5-star linebacker chose Ohio State over Texas. Big win for the Buckeyes. Alabama on fire with more to come. They're hanging in the 2 spot. Then we got Oregon. And last weekend, it was 5-star Dorian Moore that made the surprise commitment. This weekend, Dorian Moore picks Oregon. The number 1 wide receiver in America chooses the Ducks over Texas and Ohio State. Dan Lanning with another huge statement. Of course, UGA makes some noise. On Sunday, today, they flipped South Carolina's top commitment in the class. Shamari Earls out of Chester, Virginia, flipped from South Carolina to UGA, and the Dogs are holding steady in the 4 spot. Then you got LSU at 5, and LSU, they got busy this weekend as well. They land Damian Shanklin right here on the On3 Recruits channel. You guys all saw that. Then they land defensive lineman Zion Williams, and then they flip Brandon Brown from Texas. So LSU doing what they can to hang in that top 5. Then you got Notre Dame, Clemson, Texas A&M, OU, and FSU. Kind of the backside of that top 10 doesn't change very much from where we were on Thursday, the last time we were on the show. Miami now at 11. Wow. Miami has come up about 8 spots in the last 10 days. On July 4th, they land Hilton Stubbs. Then on Saturday, they land interior offensive lineman S.J. Alu-Faituli. Now, both of these guys end up being Miami's 2 highest ranked commitments. So to say that Miami is just getting started is an understatement. Watch, they got a lot more coming. Auburn at 12, Tennessee 13, Penn State at 14, Texas now at 15. They were at 17 last week. They had a chance to really move up if they could have landed Dorian Moore. But for now, Texas sits at 16. Missouri up at 16. Michigan, USC, Rutgers, and Kentucky round out the top 20. So, like I said, lots of action this weekend. We're going to go behind the scenes of what happened at Oregon, Texas, and Tennessee. Big show. Let's get to it. There were fireworks shows all over the country on the 4th of July, but there was one big blast in Duncanville, Texas that sent Duck fans into a frenzy. Number 1 wide receiver Dorian Moore committed to Oregon in dramatic fashion. You see the green smoke signifying his commitment to the Ducks. What a night it was. But in this video, we're talking about what's next, and there could be a lot more to come for Oregon. I got Justin Hopkins from Scoop Duck. He's going to break it all down with us. But first, Duck fans, these are exciting times. Lock in, hit subscribe to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. I appreciate it. All right, let's bring in Justin Hopkins. And Justin, Dorian Moore. Wow, what a battle this ended up to be. What went on behind the scenes the past few days? Because we hear a lot of Texas fans this morning saying, oh, it was all NIL driven, but you and I both know there's a lot of factors. And hey, NIL might have been a major factor, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. What did you hear happen behind the scenes to put Oregon over the top?
Yeah, I mean, did Texas run out of money all of a sudden or what? No, I mean, NIL is a factor.
Trade in a Lambo or two, I guess, huh?
Yeah, exactly. How I couldn't get the resale value back out of him. No, I mean, NIL was certainly a factor in his commitment. It was a factor in his recruitment. I mean, he was going to get paid what he was due, and whatever that value is, who knows? But that wasn't it for Oregon. I think that they really, really sold hard a chance for him to kind of blaze his own trail out in Eugene, kind of get away, just kind of, to spread his wings, if you will, as a Duck. And I think that was one of the biggest things. Additionally, Oregon had several coaches, and I'm sure Texas did too, but Oregon had several coaches and several recruiting personnel. And I had people tell me that, weren't just assistant coaches or paid coaches, like, man, our involvement and our recruitment of this kid is unlike anything that I've ever seen. Just the amount of effort that they put into it, the amount of love that they tried to show the family and make his family feel comfortable with potentially leaving to Eugene. Certainly helps that there's been a newly added flight, direct flight from Austin to Eugene. I believe it was Southwest Airlines. That was convenient. Last thing is Junior Adams is a killer. He's a stone cold killer on the recruiting trail. But Rashad Samples, a recently hired running back coach with ties to Duncanville, with ties to Texas, was absolutely instrumental in this as well. So I think you put those two guys on the trail together, and that became really what it boiled down to for Oregon, just the fact that they were able to relentlessly recruit him and really lean in on those relationships.
Yeah, what a night it was for Duck fans. And like I said, there could be more to come. And I want to talk now about five-star corner DJ Picket, because there's just big news about him. He was expected to make a decision sometime in October, definitely during the season at some point. But then all of a sudden comes back that he wants to do it on July 17th. So now all of a sudden we're 2 weeks away from DJ Picket, five-star cornerback out of Florida, ready to make his decision. And it sounds like, talking to Steve Wiltfong, Ducks are in a pretty good spot here.
Yeah, I've kind of felt like and posted on Scoop Duck that I think the one constant in his top two has been Oregon. I think at times it's been Miami. I think at times it's been LSU. I know there's been other schools there, but I feel like Oregon's just kind of been that constant in the top two. And I'm not saying that I felt like they've led the whole time. I just feel like they've certainly been a very serious candidate in his recruitment, and kind of leading up in this earlier commitment. I'm with Wiltfong. I really feel like the Ducks are in the driver's seat, and once again, they focused a lot on Pickett early on. He's been on campus several times. Obviously, I know we talked about this previously. I know Zephyr Hills isn't exactly in Tampa, but we're calling it Tampa bonus.
Hey,
and the Ducks have
lump it in there.
Tampa adjacent, right? And the Ducks have a couple guys committed from the Tampa area, and I think that was a little bit by design. So, for Oregon, I really like where they're at. You and I both know we've been in this game long enough, Josh, that a lot's going to happen over the next 2 weeks or week and a half-ish in his recruitment. But I think if he was committing today, it might be Oregon. And now we'll just have to see if they're able to hold out. Miami's going to be tough. I think a lot of people are sleeping on LSU too. They're definitely tough. It's going to be an interesting couple weeks.
Yeah, and 2 weeks during the dead period is more like 2 months. So a lot of twists and turns available for DJ Pickett's recruitment. But another one that it seems like Oregon's leading for is Trey McNutt. And a couple months ago, you asked me, where do you think he's going? I easily would have penciled him into Ohio State's class maybe 3 or 4 months ago. But things change, and now it's clear Oregon is the team to beat for Trey McNutt, the number two safety in the country out of Ohio. Rumors are, though, he hasn't set a decision date, but the rumors are swirling that he could do something this summer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm going to use that M word that some people hate, but momentum. Oregon's got momentum right now, right? I mean, Dorian Moore is not only just a big commitment for Oregon and a big sting for Texas. That one resonates nationally. Like, everybody's looking at that like, whoa, what are the Ducks doing? Enter Trey McNutt, enter DJ Pickett. They're going to look at that and be like, man, Oregon's really trying to build a program. They're working on a national championship. I think Oregon has led for Trey McNutt, and I'm with you. I think that he potentially could be making a decision maybe in July, maybe in August, but like you said, in the summer, probably before his senior season, so he can focus on that. And this is one where I feel like Oregon's the team to beat. I have my prediction on Oregon. And, I don't know, maybe Oregon tries to sneak it in there before DJ Pickett to give them a little bit more mojo there. But things are certainly falling in place for Dan Lanning, that's for sure.
Man, and Dorian Brew kicks it all off. And Dorian Brew's from the state of Texas, but he might not be the last five-star out of the state of Texas for Oregon. Michael Terry, they had the number one wide receiver, Dorian Moore, now the number one athlete in America. Michael Terry, sounds like the Ducks are in a good spot here. And is he another one where we don't exactly know when he wants to decide?
Yeah, that's correct. He hasn't given any indication of when he would like to commit. He has mentioned at least once or twice in my interviews with him, potentially making a summer decision, but never, been married to that idea. So, yeah, that's one that I felt like before Dorian Moore's commitment that Oregon led. And now, do you wonder, does that rock the boat a little bit? Maybe does that push him Texas direction? Will the two split or will they join up in Eugene? And, gosh, if you're Dan Lanning and Will Stein, that would almost become an embarrassment of riches, right? Having Dallas Wilson, Dorian Moore, Michael Terry, rest of the guys they have committed. That would certainly be a lot of firepower on offense. So I think Oregon has been probably no worse than in his top two for the last month or so, but I'm really interested to see how this Dorian Moore commitment kind of impacts things there with Oregon and Texas.
And, here I am thinking, hey, we're going to talk about three five-star recruits right here with Oregon after landing a five-star. And I totally forgot. I blew it. There's Jonah Williams. He's in play, the number one safety in America. He's also out of the state of Texas. How could I not mention Jonah Williams? Because, again, just a couple months ago, maybe even 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, we felt Jonah Williams was a long shot. But now things are starting to change. There's some baseball coaching changes that have gone on in the state of Texas that kind of maybe made the waters a little murky there. But what are you hearing about Jonah Williams and the possibility of bringing him to Oregon?
Well, I know you're a pro, Josh, so I wondered if you'd circle back on this one, and you did. You did it just like a true pro. And I'm going to be honest. I'm actually really close to putting in an Oregon prediction on Jonah Williams, wow. I believe. I think I've heard enough that the Ducks have just done a tremendous job here. I think Oregon has wanted to I think they've wanted to sign 4 to 5 defensive backs in this cycle, two at corner, two at safety. And right now they're looking at potentially having that be a 5-star grouping, if you will. So I do think Oregon leads for McNutt. And I also think that they're in a great spot with Jonah Williams. And, I know baseball was a big part of that. And there was some, transition there with the baseball coach at Texas A&M. I don't know that was so much of a factor, just as what Oregon was selling, to Williams and having a really strong baseball program there. So again, I think that Oregon leads for Jonah Williams. It might be slim, and it still is going to be tough to get him. But once again, we're talking about another 5-star that the Ducks could be closing on this summer. It's
trending that way, and you know what else is happening? The Ducks are now trending for the number 1 class in America. They're not there yet. They need another couple pieces to go their way, but Duck fans, talk to me. The flock is hot. Let us know below who's going to be the next 5-star to commit to Oregon. Let us know. Comment section below. Well, you've made it to the end of today's video, but there's hundreds more videos on the On3 Recruits channel for you to check out, and also, while you're here, hit subscribe. Let's talk some Texas Longhorn recruiting, because it was a week of highs and lows for Texas. And yeah, they're no stranger to these mega recruitments. And this week had a little of everything. Now, they did land in-state corner Cade Phillips. He commits to the Horns. That was big. But they miss out on in-state wide receiver Dorian Moore. He does not commit to the Horns. We're going to talk through it with Inside Texas recruiting analyst Justin Wells. But first, Texas fans, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel. We are the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right, let's bring in Justin Wells, and we're going to start with Dorian Moore. What happened? Because we talked all summer. It seemed like in the spring it was trending in Texas' direction. It seemed like in the summer they had a stranglehold on this thing, and then it goes sideways, and he commits to Oregon on July 4th. What happened?
Yeah, that's a bad beat for the Texas faithful, because everything lined up for Texas. It's one of those things where, if all those things happen, it's almost, you felt almost assured, okay, this was the next step. But Dorian really wanted to blaze his own path. He really wanted to kind of do his own thing. And so at the end of the day, that meant going to the other side of the country to play football. Instead of playing around his family and his friends and with some of his family and friends, he decided to blaze his on path and head up to the Pacific Northwest. And you can't blame him, because Oregon is super hot right now. They are doing a lot of good on the recruiting trail. You have to give Dan Lanning and Rashad Samples and Will Stein and those guys a ton of credit. They are doing really well. And Dorian, when he went up there for that official, he just felt at home. He just felt comfortable. But ultimately, I think Texas was as much as you could do. They were up there as much as you can do. The only thing more would be to probably break the budget from an NIL standpoint, and I don't think Sark wanted to do that. I know how much they value Dorian, but, I don't think they're going to let a player set the market. And so at the end of the day, I think he was comfortable going up there. I think he enjoyed everything about Oregon, but this came down to NIL, and I think that's why he's an Oregon Duck.
And you thought with Texas and the lineup of Lambos, and I didn't see them losing an NIL battle, but here we are with Dorian Moore. Now, they also missed on Riley Pettijohn, one of the top linebackers in America, just borderline 5-star prospect from the state of Texas. He commits to Ohio State. Now, this one was trending to Ohio State late, but which is a bigger loss, do you think? Dorian Moore or Riley Pettijohn?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think the two defensive linemen they lost in the last 2 weeks are worse than Dorian Moore and Riley Pettijohn and Josiah Sharma and Zion Williams. But with those two, I'd probably lean a little bit more towards Dorian because I think they have a solid base of linebacker in the program right now, and they've got a couple. They got one committed already, and so with Pettijohn. Texas was the leader by far, according to him, for the longest. They were an early evaluation. They really set the tone in that recruitment. Johnny Nansen did a great job. Steve Sarkisian did a great job. But also, Pettijohn was closest to Jeff Choate. When he left to take the Nevada head coaching job, I think that made Nansen have to make up a little bit of slack, right. Which, in all instances, everyone within the program kind of thought that that's where they were. Takes the official visit. There's rumors about how he didn't enjoy it as much as others. There was rumors that, he could be looking a little bit more out of state. But just like Dorian Moore, I think this recruitment came down to NIL as well. I think it came down to, Texas having a number that's always going to be comparable to any other team or program in the country. And maybe Ohio State decided to up that thing. And what we're seeing, I don't think you're necessarily seeing it from the players. I think you're seeing it from agents. I think you're seeing it from parents. I think those are the ones that is more involved in this than the kids are, and probably safely in that regard. And so when it came down to it, Pettijohn's a guy that I still think makes sense at Texas. Like, he's going to be a guy that I think Texas is going to keep recruiting, keep pushing, try to get him on campus. And when you talk about flip guys down the road, it's all hypothetical. I'm not sure Dorian is in that state of mind where they could possibly flip him. With Pettijohn, I think there's a chance down the road. Now, that's a long ways, and this is a marathon, not a sprint. But again, I think this is where NIL reared its ugly head, and Ohio State was just a little bit better on that regard.
Yeah, but Texas is going to go win their NIL battles, and one that I feel good about winning right now is Jamie French. We're talking about the wide receiver out of the state of Florida. Do you still, with everything that's happened with Dorian Moore, and we know Jamie French and Dorian Moore are great friends, not necessarily meaning that they want to play at the same place, but do you think Dorian Moore going to Oregon will have any impact on Jamie French?
No. I think Jamie French in Texas have made sense since April. I think Jamie French is going to forge his own path. I think when Chris Jackson focuses solely on his big out-of-state target, last cycle it was Ryan Wingo out of St. Louis. Yeah. This year it's Jamie French out of Jacksonville, Florida. I think Texas more than not gets him. Now you have to have that precursor. Listen, disclaimer: NIL could change this within 24 hours of them committing. We have seen that in multiple cases in this cycle, and it's not going to be the last time we see it. But I think French, you have to understand the thing with French, he's closer to KJ Lacey and Lockett. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that matters on the end, but KJ Lacey and French have known each other for a long time. Lockett and those guys have started to get a lot closer. And DK was close to those guys too. But I think French is definitely a more gettable thing at this point. I think Texas still looks fantastic. I think they're going to have to recruit through the whistle because I think Ohio State is going to continue to push. And I think they're going to try to get an official visit during the fall. He's going to make his decision in August. KeKe Lockett's going to make his decision in August. I think Texas is in a good spot for both. I don't necessarily think Dorian Moore's affects it too much. If anything, it might help Texas' cause.
Does Texas, when it comes to NIL, is Texas more willing to go overboard when it comes to out-of-state prospects versus in-state? Because we look at Jamie French, we look at we look at Wingo last year, Jarrett Gibson, Cedric Baxter. These were all big-time battles that Texas was able to win, through NIL. That was a major factor in it. But now here we kind of see, oh, no, we got a budget. We can't do this. We can't do that. But is that more for the in-state guys, or do they know when, hey, we're going out of state, we're going to have to go a little bit overboard to land this guy?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think those are just particulars at this moment. I don't think it's an in-state, out-of-state thing. I think Sark has a system, and he has of how much he will go above and beyond on certain positions on certain players. And I think he does it from the inside out. And so that would mean Michael Fasusi hypothetically makes this decision in the next 6 to 8 weeks before his senior year, and at the last hour, a team comes up with a higher bid. I could see them absolutely matching that and going higher.
Yeah.
Because offensive tackle is a lot harder to find than a wide receiver. I think Sark will never have a hard time finding quarterbacks, running backs, or wide receivers. Yeah. And he knows he has got to focus a lot of that in this class on the offensive line and the defensive line. I think he just has a system, and it's worked for him so far. It's a roster management type deal that's why the culture is so good there. And so I don't necessarily think it's in-state, out-of-state. I think it's more on a position basis. And when you're talking about defensive line or offensive tackles, Texas is definitely going to match in most cases and go beyond on those.
Yeah, and same with most teams across the country probably. One more wide receiver I want to circle back on, and that's KeKe Lockett. Now, when we talked about the trio of 5 stars and Jamie French, Dorian Moore, KeKe Lockett was kind of I don't want to say the odd man out for Texas, but it was of the 3, we probably felt least confident in KeKe Lockett to Texas. Now that Dorian Moore's going the other direction, do you think that we hear more about Lockett in Texas, or is there another guy on the board that you would point to?
I think you'll hear a little bit more about Lockett in Texas. I think there's a chance they try to get him back on campus in late July for the barbecue. I believe it's the 27th or the 28th. Mm-hmm. He's making his decision on August 7th. Listen, Texas is in a great spot there. I know his family loves Texas. I know he does. That's one of the first teams that offered, one of the first places he visited. I remember meeting him almost over 3 years ago on campus before he had any stars. And proximity makes a lot of sense there. But KeKe Lockett is a very smart, very gracious kid. And there have been some really good pushes from Alabama, from Texas A&M, from LSU, from Florida State, and KeKe's listening to those. And so I think Texas is going to have to, again, recruit through the whistle on KeKe, because I think they've positioned themselves wonderfully in that recruitment. And that decision's going down in less than a month, or a month to the day, rather. But at the end of the day, I love where Texas sits there, but these other schools have made him a priority as well. And so Texas is going to have to really get their boots in the ground, and Chris Jackson's going to have to pull these guys out of the hat.
All right, Justin, you're off the hot seat. We've had a lot of Texas segments with you on this show. None of them were probably as hard as sitting down for these questions. I appreciate you coming by the Inside Scoop today.
Hey, always a pleasure, Josh.
Let's talk Tennessee recruiting. And in this video, we're going to talk Tennessee versus Georgia. There seems to be a bunch of these matchups happening on the recruiting trail. So we are going to break down some of these head-to-head battles. I got Matt Ray from VolQuest on this video. But first, Tennessee fans, do me a favor and hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel, the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube. All right, let's bring in Matt Ray. Matt, let's go to Atlanta and talk about wide receiver Travis Smith, because he's set to announce his decision on July 13th. So little less than a week away for him. And, we said there's a lot of Georgia battles, Georgia leading on the RPM right now. But what does it mean for the number 11 wide receiver who's about to decide?
Yeah, Josh, I think for really the longest time in this recruitment with Travis Smith, since we've been talking about him all the way back into October, which coincidentally enough was right before he came to Tennessee for the Tennessee and Georgia game on November 18th there. This has been a Tennessee-Georgia battle kind of throughout this recruitment. Now, Auburn and Alabama both worked to shake things up, but ultimately that's kind of where things have been, and each of those teams have had momentum at different points in this recruitment. Coming out of the month of June, as the calendar slipped over to July here, continue to hear a lot of positive things around Tennessee and Travis Smith. Georgia very much still in the thick of it. And a big part of this decision for Travis Smith has been, can he leave the state of Georgia? He's been really intrigued with the relationship that he has in Knoxville with Kelsey Pope and what Tennessee's offense provides. He was able to take a practice in the spring. They're early April. And I think if Tennessee wins out here next week, I think looking back, official visits were huge, relationships were huge. I think that practice in April is going to be something that really made a long-standing impression on Travis Smith when it comes to Tennessee. He saw a lot of guys with similar body types, similar ability to him running around out there on the practice field. Dante Thornton, Chris Brazel, those types of guys. And that's kind of the usage that Tennessee sold him. He saw those guys catch a lot of passes that day. And I think that's something that stuck in his mind a good bit. Both these schools recruiting him to the finish line. Alabama and Auburn are going to continue to be in the mix. And, Travis Smith's not saying a lot now that official visits are over. So I think we'll see a true, announcement type deal with him where maybe he doesn't necessarily tell his staff ahead of time, where this is all going to come down to. He wants to protect his moment.
Is this recruitment similar last year in Mike Matthews? Mike Matthews, also from the Atlanta area, was also being recruited by Georgia. Do you see any similarities here?
There are definitely some similarities here. I think when you look at it just overall, and I talked to Travis a few days before he made the trip to Knoxville for his official visit, and he talked at length to me about how he's kind of leaned on Mike Matthews throughout the process. He wanted to know, hey, when you got your Final Four down to what it was, Georgia was one of those, but it was Tennessee, Clemson, and USC hanging around in there. He's like, kind of what did you focus on that allowed you to leave the state? So they've had those conversations. Mike Matthews was Travis Smith's player host during his official visit. So it was that's been something that Tennessee's used to their benefit with Travis Smith. And kind of when you look at the state of Georgia, receivers have been leaving the state for the last little bit. So I think, that's one thing that Tennessee has laid on to Travis Smith as well. So, yeah, there's definitely some similarities in those two recruitments.
Yeah, just last month, C.J. Wiley, one that a lot of experts thought Georgia was going to land, ends up going to Florida State. So leaving the state of Georgia again for a top wide receiver. We'll have to see what happens. Let's stay in the state of Georgia and talk about a Georgia commitment. Linebacker Jordan Parlot. Now, he had a great visit to Tennessee in June. There was a lot of talk coming out of that one about his interest in Tennessee, but this weekend we started seeing some picks come in on the recruiting prediction machine in favor of Tennessee. Now, what's going on? What's the timetable here that we could expect maybe something to happen with Jordan?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, this has been a recruitment for 18 months now, basically, that he's been committed to Georgia. And again, another situation, I talked to him and Travis Smith on the same day at the KeKe Classic at Georgia Tech. And I said, look, you're coming up to Tennessee. You're saying a lot of good things about him here. I said, but you've been to Auburn. You've been to Florida State. You've seen those programs. It felt like your recruitment has, had different momentum swings, but you've maintained that commitment to Georgia throughout. And I think for Jaden, ultimately, at the end of the day, this is, a opportunity for him as he went through June official visits to really analyze everything about all the programs that he was considering. I think Tennessee crushed his official visit. I think he saw everything that William Inge has been telling him since day one, since he got to Knoxville, and told him that he was his number one guy, that Tennessee was going to come after him, hard now that he was in the fold as the new linebackers coach. And I think all that started to add up for Jaden. He went back to Georgia, the following week. He wants to make a very informed decision in whatever he does. Coming out of that official visit in Knoxville, he was not sure that he was going to make the trip back to Georgia. He thought he might have seen enough to go ahead and just sit down with his family and decide what the best move for his future was. He ended up taking that trip to Georgia, and he's still working towards a decision. I think, Josh, we can see a final decision from Jaden Parlot before the end of this month. That's something that he told me when I saw him before the official visits really ramped up there to Tennessee and Georgia. That's something that he maintained coming out of those official visits. He's very focused on being the guy on that Buford defense as they're trying to get back to another state championship.
All right, we'll see what happens there. I mean, Jordan Parlot has been committed to Georgia, like you said, for over a year, so this would be a huge flip. But it sounds like there's some smoke there. Now we're going to talk about another linebacker, Christian Gass. He's out of Covington, Georgia, and again, mostly a UGA Tennessee battle. But Matt, this isn't a, whoever gets Parlot will be happy with Gass. I mean, both these programs want to take both these guys, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. And I think both of these guys, when you look at them, I think they fit what Tennessee and Georgia try to do to a T. They're versatile guys. They're super long, super athletic, high IQ guys that can play multiple roles inside of that defense. Christian Gass, Tennessee fell in love with Christian Gass in the spring, got him up to campus, measured him, had him in, felt like everything that he was, who he was as a person lined up with what they saw, as well as what they saw on film and his verified track times. He's a freakish type athlete, and that's, the reason you see Georgia so heavily involved with him. coming out of the month of June, Tennessee was in as good of a spot as it felt like they could be. Now, this is going to be a battle. He has announced his commitment date for July 20th, and this is going to be a battle to the finish line. This is a guy that both of these programs covet, and if either one of them get him, they're getting a freakish top athlete in the middle of the defense that can grow and play multiple roles as he continues to develop as a football player.
Yeah, you can tell that recruitment's heating up. Speaking of one recruitment that's not heating up because it's already red hot, that's David Sanders. Now, of course, UGA's involved here, but the way I see it, I think Ohio State, I think everybody right now kind of views this as 1A, 1B is Ohio State and Tennessee, whichever way you want to put those guys. And then you have Georgia in the 2 spot. How do you see it, and what are you hearing in terms of David Sanders making decisions? Do you think we hear something this month?
Josh, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a 1A, 1B situation right now. I think, depending on who you talk to, there's reason for Ohio State to feel good about David Sanders as the calendar flips over to July. And I think depending on who you talk to, there's good reason for Tennessee to feel good about David Sanders as the calendar flips over to July. But now that official visits are over, I don't think it comes as much as of a shock given the fact that David Sanders and his family took those spring visits. They took a bunch of official visits in the month of June. Things are kind of quiet there from their camp as they're processing information. They do so much on these visits. They take in so much information, and they break it down detail by detail. So I don't think that's much of a shock that things are very quiet there. It would not surprise me if David Sanders makes a decision sometime in July. He hinted probably toward the 1st of August, most likely. But I think when you look at the way David Sanders has attacked his process, I think it's very possible that we see him do something before the end of this month. And nothing definitive there. I do think he gets it out of the way before the season starts at Providence Day. But the thing about Dave Sanders is he is going to go through this recruitment at his pace. He's made that very clear. And I think once they get this information broke down and he sits down and says, hey, this is where it's at, I'm ready to go, we'll obviously see him make a decision. But it would not shock me if David Sanders does something for the 1st of July, just given the way that he's handled things.
Do you think that this recruitment, being that it's Tennessee versus Ohio State for the number 1 offensive tackle in America, does this take on a little bit more importance because of what happened last year with Jordan Seaton? Both Ohio State and Tennessee, like you said at the beginning of this, you could make a case for David Sanders. I would feel good about Ohio State. I could tell you a bunch of reasons why I think he ends up there. I could tell you a bunch of reasons why I think right now he ends up at Tennessee. And I kind of felt that's the same situation we were in last year with Jordan Seaton. So is this David Sanders recruitment even more meaningful because they both missed out on Seaton last year?
I think that's a great question. I think when you look at it from the Tennessee side of things, and I can't speak to it from the Ohio State side of things, but if you're Tennessee and you land Jordan Seaton last year, you most likely don't swing so big at a Lance Hurd who's going to start for you this fall. Now, ultimately, I still think it makes this recruitment that much more important if you're Tennessee, in a way that you've utilized the transfer portal to fill needs throughout your, 3-4 seasons here now in Rocky Top. But ultimately, you haven't hit on that blue chip guy necessarily, that 5-star, build your offensive line class around guy like a David Sanders. You swung big. You've been involved with those types of guys each year you've been there. But I think it still takes on, some importance regardless of if you land a guy like Lance Hurd out of the transfer portal because you missed Jordan Seaton. And I think for Ohio State, obviously, you're looking at it kind of in the same way. You missed on your guy. You managed to get him back up there to campus very late in that recruitment. As you said, you had a lot of good reason to feel like you were going to be able to land him. Both of those programs are going to want to build through the high school ranks, and there's just not many guys that come along like David Sanders year in and year out, and you've had him on your campus 4 times before a decision this year alone. So, I do think it's still massive regardless of the Jordan Seaton situation.
Yeah, and for the same exact reasons, I think he went to Ohio State 4 times. I think if an Ohio State fan is listening to what you said, those same reasons why he's important and critical to Tennessee are the same exact reasons he's important and critical to Ohio State. So I'm just going to sit back and watch this one because last year with Jordan Seaton was crazy. I imagine David Sanders, as we get down to it, is going to be equally as crazy. But, hey, I want to hear from you, Tennessee fans. What do we think about some of these UGA Tennessee battles? What do we think of David Sanders? Let me know. Comment section below.